we can remove that friction from the customer.
Hi there, this is Bianca Lopes, and this is Be in the Know, brought to you by Tail and Women in Identity. And I have another fabulous woman in identity. Cheryl, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yay. Cheryl, other than fabulous shoes and a amazing personality, tell me about Cheryl. What did she do for school, and how did she get into the business of identity?
I would say by accident, a happy accident.
Don't be surprised.
No.
Pretty much every person that I've interviewed thus far, and I think I'm racking up to about 100 and something, nobody has said to me except one person that they actually decided to go into identity.
So I think the same can be said about the civil service, actually. So nobody ever really decides to go into the civil service, but I did decide that I wanted to go into the civil service.
Nobody twisted your arm.
No. It was
for
20
years.
20 years, yeah. And the reason that I joined the civil service is because I wanted to make a difference.
That's amazing.
So I wanted to
Utopian
do the...
in its fine
Absolutely.
ethos. I want to make a difference in the world.
Yeah.
I'm going to go join civil service.
Absolutely. So growing up in a very small town, actually, that I grew up in, there were points in our life where my family needed the welfare state. And for those periods of time, it was there. And actually, it helped us continue as a family.
That's amazing.
So that really drove my decision to, I want to do this and I want to do it and I want to do it really well.
And you understood what it meant to be in the receiving end of that.
Yeah. So I started at the very bottom and have worked my way through. The operational stuff led me into fraud and error prevention. Okay. So really looking at the welfare benefit system and saying, actually, how do people make mistakes, and which of those mistakes are deliberate, and which actually could we be designing out of the service.
So from a place of empathy, you tried redesigning and a human-centric approach.
Absolutely.
So what does that mean in terms of technology, and what are you guys doing? And tell us a little bit about your role now.
Yeah. So my role at the moment is really around looking, certainly in the UK government, we have historically imposed quite a high hurdle of identity, because in the belief that then secures you to do anything that you want to do. So we work really closely with government digital services, looking at the standards and saying, actually, how can we get that proportionality where if somebody is coming to us to see when their next appointment date is, actually, I don't really need to know who they are. Yeah. I give them the information. If they want to change the bank account, absolutely different ballgame.
Yeah, but then now you're just cheating the trade-off. It's proportionality is what you're talking about.
Proportionality. Yeah. So let's look at the context of what the person's trying to do. Do we know them? So, are you already a customer of ours? Did I speak to you yesterday? What's your digital footprint like?
About it, right? Just like if you saw me tomorrow and you didn't recognize me, you'd be like, you're a bit of them.
Yeah. Are you coming in from the same mobile phone? Yeah. There are lots of
use
markers.
Technology to help identifiers.
Absolutely. Yeah. There are so many markers and identifiers that means that we can remove that friction from the customer and maybe only step up that journey when either we haven't got enough of those indicators, or the customer is trying to do something for the first time, or trying
So that's a massive amount of work. So let's talk about both sides of that work. One of them is deciding the proportionality of what they're getting.
Yes.
Right? So how do you attribute, or how do you build sort of a scoring model to say the information about your appointment is at a 2 versus you transferring your pension bank account is at a 10?
Yeah.
What kind of work and what kind of redoing of your systems have you had to do to get to that level of granularity?
So go back 5 years ago, the answer was we'll put something right at the very beginning of the journey.
Yeah.
So once we know Bianca is who we know, we can then transact as normal.
Keys to the kingdom.
So my team really spend quite a lot of time with the digital teams going through at what point do we need to know. So what are the transactions that can be carried out in this service? We assess those against the standards, usually GPG 45, all the good practice guides, all of that good stuff. And then we start to look at the solution. So only at the point at which we know what we're dealing with. So a lot of our services actually range from zero kind of identity proofing through to what we would know as kind of beyond reasonable doubt. So there's a real variety,
big range,
but that doesn't mean that we have to put the highest first.
So that is on sort of more of a system infrastructure mindset of how you're building and looking at the systems, the processes, and the technology. How are you doing for the tech side? Because government is not an easy person to deal with. Like, I've had a startup, and selling to governments is a tendered bid process. And you're looking at making this frictionless in the sense of as many identifiers as possible, contextually driven.
But our services, almost the one-size-fits-all as an integration point is easier. So me talking about identifiers and all of these things bringing together actually is like, oh, Cheryl, that sounds like a lot of work for us.
A lot of integration, a lot of providers, a lot of lifecycle management.
Absolutely. So the whole point of the Dynamic Trust Hub is to layer that complexity away from our services and away from the customer, actually. So the orchestration layer is backed up by a risk engine that is looking at not only the context of what the person is trying to do, but actually all of those watch lists and markers,
all the providers that would be into
everything that would be in there. And I think most of our digital services are as excited as I am in terms of how this will change the face of what we do. Eventually it will lead to self-service for customers. They will be able to choose their route, because we will layer all of that
just
complexity
like a video
away.
They can choose their path.
Absolutely.
I keep preaching this for a few years now, of saying that if we start implementing some principles of autonomy, mastery into people's systems, humanity will just fall.
Absolutely. So what we end up with is the small percentage of people who really do need that targeted support. They really need that help.
And that's okay.
And that's okay, because that's
Needing
what we're here for.
It's okay.
Absolutely.
And it's not linear again. So if we change our gears to kind of end this off, you've been a woman in this business and you're part of our Women in Identity group.
I am.
And what advice would you have for somebody watching? Whether they're women, black, white, green, purple, I don't care.
Yeah.
In starting in the industry is tough and challenging, and it's a bit of a cliquey industry. And we love our jargons, which is part of what I'm trying to break. And I love that you're trying to bring humans back to this conversation. So what advice would you give them?
So I think what
are some of the things that worked for you?
The turning point for me was when I was sat in a room and somebody was explaining something really technical and said to me, I'm going to dumb this down for you. And my response was, actually, it takes more effort to speak in plain English and dumb it up than it does to have that whole technology piece. So I think for me, being brave enough to say, actually, I don't think it is dumbing it down. I think it's explaining it in a different way.
I'm totally quoting that from now on.
That was the turning point for me in my entire career, actually. So I think that was the first thing. The second thing is fabulous people like you and others in Women in Identity. So find somebody who can help you tell your story in the way that you need to tell it. And don't be afraid, be bold.
Amazing. Well, I love that. I got goosebumps and I'm super excited. So with that, a big hug and thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I'm excited to see what this goes next. So stay tuned, be in the know, and we'll see you next time.